We'll get started. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Thank you. This may be rough, but no, today excited. We talked 2 weeks ago about a podcast that I ran across by John Maxwell called Maximizing the Moments. This is, I'm going to touch on the second portion. They broke it up into two. We talked a little bit about, words that are associated with leadership. We talked about open-handedness and other words that were about opening our minds up to what is possible and how do we maximize the moment. So today I'm going to jump into, we've got, I believe it is 6 words, don't quote me on that, but I believe it is 6 words that Maxwell speaks about in that will help us maximize the moment. So as I was preparing this, I'm always thinking of trying to think of examples from what we do here on a daily basis. And, the basis for maximizing the moment is what can I do today that will set me up for success tomorrow? Oftentimes people are sitting there waiting for something to happen. And unfortunately, sitting there waiting is going to leave you waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And the one thing that I kind of related this to was when we implemented our board meeting here. I think it's been, we've probably been doing that for over a year now. Each and every day, where we even through the virus, we did it virtually, which was that was a bit of a challenge, mostly because I was trying to hold a 2-year-old on some days. We found out that cheese works really well to keep her occupied while we went through that, and the mute button on Zoom works well as also. But the board meeting for us as it started was, we made that first step and really just putting the numbers up just to see what we did. And as we got into it, the one thing that we realized was that we were focusing a lot on what happened yesterday, what already happened in the past, and less on what was happening today, or what were we going to do today to be better than we were yesterday. And so, as we've kind of evolved the meeting, it's a lot nicer looking now than our whiteboard that we used to have in that small little room. And we moved it to the front, and then we have it a nice little area for it. But the toughest part on there, and I think the reason why I came up with the sheets was, what are those action items that we're going to do today? What are those things that we're actually going to do today to win the day? And I think these were the toughest things for some people to come up with, and they still are. There's still many a times when I'll sit there and listen for the action items on a day that was read yesterday, and we may not have a whole lot of action items. And why is that? Why is it so tough to come up with those action items? Well, as we said, it's a lot easier just to wait. It's a lot easier just to sit passively and hope something good happens. Well, we'll hope for the best. We're gonna really try out there today. But what can we do actively today that will help us win the day? Do we know what our goal is? On the board, it clearly states what the goal is, but what are those little goals that are going to help us reach that larger goal? The other piece, and why it is so uncomfortable to do those action items, is because just that, it's uncomfortable. There's discomfort in, one, admitting that what we did yesterday didn't reach the goal, and we're going to have to do something different today in order to hit that. Because if we do the same thing as we did yesterday, chances are we're probably not going to hit the goal again. And sometimes it's only something small. Oftentimes a lot of people, if we don't hit the goal, we got to change up everything we're doing. Well, not necessarily. We're probably on the right path, but what small little adjustment can we make to get there? What thing did we do today that, maybe we're going to reach out and find out, did we do that a little bit? If we did it a little bit differently today, would we get a different result? And oftentimes that's difficult. We've all talked to people who, in this industry, the common saying, and I've said it many a times, is, I've been doing this for 20 years. Okay, that's great. What kind of results have you gotten over those 20 years? Do they keep getting better, or are they roughly the same? Because if they're roughly the same, you're living comfortably. You've figured out what you're going to do. You've figured out what it is that works for you, but could it work better? This is why I'm so passionate about one-on-one meetings, about providing that feedback and challenging those that we lead to make those changes. It's very easy in a group setting for people just to kind of sit there and go, oh yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, we'll try that. It's a lot harder when you're sitting there and we're putting down actionable items that we're going to do today. But that's ultimately what's going to help us get there. Not having, just everybody agreeing that, yeah, that would be good, but no one taking action. We're all waiting for something to happen. Recently, I think I spoke about this. I've been telling a lot of people about it. I feel like the poster child for this. But, with the gyms closing over through this virus, finding a place to work out was more challenging. And I started first by going over to, my parents just live not too far from the office, and so I started going over there and just running around their neighborhood. It seemed like every day I went to run, there was like literally a 30-mile-an-hour wind like whipping around there, and like even when you turn the corner, it's in a giant loop, it was still blowing like right. I was like, this sucks. I like working out inside, and so probably like a month into it, my dad got one of those. He's always up on the newest whatever it may be, but got one of the Peloton bikes. And so I was like, I'm going to try this thing out. It's inside, so I get to get away from the wind. And the cool thing about it is, one, it's a really good workout. Two, is it tracks all your stuff. So you have an account, tracks all your, all of your metrics and this, that, and the other, how fast you're going, how much effort you're giving. And so I started paying attention to that about the third or fourth time I did it. And I found myself kind of chasing what I did yesterday. And I also found myself leaving here and not really wanting to chase that. Like, I was pretty damn tired after that workout yesterday. That means I'm going to be more tired today if I try to beat that. And I don't know if I really feel like it. And so I kind of relate that to that discomfort. In order to get better the next day when riding the bike, I had to get uncomfortable. It would have been very easy to be comfortable. I'd already, my output was however many, and it would have been very easy just to, I'm going to take it easy today. I'm just going to cruise on the bike. But that pushing yourself into discomfort is difficult. And sometimes we need kind of that measuring tape of what is it where was I and where do I need to go? But if we're sitting there waiting, we're not paying attention to the measuring tape. We're just hoping something's going to happen. We want to stay in that comfort zone because ultimately our comfort zone probably works pretty well. If it didn't work totally, well, then you're going to be forced to change. But, while you're sitting in your comfort zone, there's a lot of certainty involved. There's a lot of, well, if I do what I did yesterday, I know kind of the result. I know how I'm going to feel. while I may not have gotten any better, I'm still going to, I'll still be somewhere. And as I look at this, kind of discomfort and where we want to be, the biggest thing I can think of is there's also some ego involved. There's also a lot of ego when it comes to your comfort zone. Because the reason you found your comfort zone is you found something that works pretty well. Someplace where you're right. Someplace where you don't have to explore what being wrong may feel like. John, in his podcast, quotes a quote from Sir Francis Bacon. Says, "If a person will begin with certainties, he will end up with doubts. But if he will be content to begin with doubts, he will end up with certainties." And so as I read that quote, if a person will begin with certainties, he will end up with doubts. But if he will be content to begin with doubts, he will end up with certainties. What I think about when I read through that is, what does it feel like to be uncertain? What are those things that come to mind when we think about being uncertain, being unsure of ourselves, trying something new, not knowing the outcome? Ultimately, we have to be curious. We've got to want to know what it feels like to be uncomfortable, what it feels like to potentially be wrong. And John's first word that he touches on, it goes along with what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is the word curiosity. Curiosity for leaders. He talks a lot about people, especially as it relates to the virus, is, when are things going to return back to normal? When are we going to get back to the way it was? And he challenges is that the virus, if anything, has got us completely uncomfortable, completely out of the box. And we would be remiss if we just wanted things to go back to the way they were and failed to learn anything new from this entire thing. And much is the same when we look back at a board meeting and we look at yesterday's results. Are we going to hope for normal? Hope for, yesterday, it was a pretty good day. We didn't hit our goal, but I was pretty comfortable. Things went well. That's when we live in certainty. That's when we live in our comfort zone, or as John describes it, we live in the box. We fail to get out of the box because curiosity opens up the chance for things to be uncertain, for things to be unstable. When we're curious, there's a chance that we could be wrong. We could fail. But the good part about it is we don't need to know everything. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to only seek out things where I know the outcome. You've got to sometimes be a little bit risky. Sometimes challenge yourself to do something a little bit different. I think about it here all the time. We change basically every minute of every day because we're curious. We have this vision of something better, we believe wholeheartedly that we're aiming to do something better. And we're curious, will that work? What if we did it this way? What if we changed this up? Well, someone else is doing it like this and it seems to work for them, but we don't do it like that. Do we rest on, well, that means that our way is wrong? No, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that, I don't know, they seem to be having some success with it, so maybe we could too. Maybe it would be better. Maybe we find out that it's worse and it doesn't work for us. Or maybe we find out through trying something new that there's another area that we weren't even thinking about that needs changed or needs improved. If we continue to place a focus on growing rather than knowing, we'll go much, much further. What is it today that you could grow in? What is it that you could change? What could you be curious about? What if that happened? I love being curious. I love talking to other companies. I love seeing what ideas we come up with. I told someone the other day, I go, it's so fun to come to work because of the caliber of people we have here and the fact that they're unafraid to be curious. Well, has anybody tried it like this? Well, what if we did that first and then did this? That's what allows us to grow. Curiosity is the key. We have to be willing to get out of our box. I don't care how we did it yesterday or the day before. Let's try something new. Let's try it a little bit different way. There's no reason to be scared. The next word that John talks about is part of what he calls the cycle of success. So we just got done talking about trying different things, looking at different things. And the first word that he talks about as part of this cycle of success, there are, I believe, 5 words, is test. So as we talked about with curiosity, when we're curious, we want to test things. And we want to test things because we know there's a better way. And that's when we have to cast that ego to the side and realize that, it wasn't that I was doing anything wrong. I was doing a whole lot of right. That's why we were successful. However, how do we ratchet it up just a little bit more? Just a little bit more. And that's the hard part. That's the hard part, is wanting to ratchet it up just a little bit more. Back to my example of the bike. Would I have got a good workout if I just would have went had the same output as yesterday? Probably had even less. If it was 10 less than yesterday, that would have still been, doing it. I would have still got something, activity, that's great. However, continuing to push and push and push is ultimately what's going to make me better. Because if I just continued to do what I did the day before, or maybe a little bit less, maybe I got up to the same level, I'm staying in the same place. Now I'm moving forward, granted, a little bit, but how much faster can I move forward if I continue to push those limits? And it's really our job as leaders, because this is so difficult. It's our job when we lead ourselves, and it's our job when we lead others. Think about it. We're often pushed by others' success. Oh, he's doing a really good job. He's got more revenue than I got this month. I'm going to go after him. That's all part of getting better. It's all part of putting that measuring tape out there for the people that you lead. What does today look like that would make it better than tomorrow? What are we going to change? What are we going to make better? You know, we spoke a couple of weeks ago about some things that we're doing right now that most people would say that we're crazy at first glance. We didn't sit there and say, well, everybody told us you couldn't do it. Well, they may have, but we're going to test something different. You know, I was talking to, this is my favorite thing to do with my two other friends here in the building, my brother and my dad. Testing does not come easy for them. They are very much so, this is how it's done, this is what we're going to do. Whereas I am probably their worst nightmare because I think that anything can be done. We'll just figure out a way. Tyler and I were standing last week when all the installers moved over here, and I came in. I think I told Christy, I go, it's like Christmas out here. This is exactly how I envisioned it. This is awesome. Look how many trucks are out here. This is great. Everybody's got their space. And I went outside, and Tyler's like, yep, I don't know where we're gonna, how we're gonna do this, or if we add more, people are in the way, and this, that, and the other. And I just looked at him. I go, hey, wasn't but about a year ago we said that we could never have the installers on Service Titan. And look at them all. They're on Service Titan now. Weird. We just couldn't figure out how we're going to put the jobs on there, and it wouldn't work, and we're never going to be able to do it. We're going to have to use our Outlook calendar still. Yeah, we use an Outlook calendar for the, but 2 or 3 years ago, we used an Outlook calendar to schedule the install jobs. It was pretty embarrassing. But now we have them all on there. They have all the pictures and all the notes and everything. But we thought that was damn near impossible. It couldn't happen. But there again, we tested some different things, figured it out. And guess what? In a year's time, we may have a different little tweak to that process that makes it easier, that makes it better. We may have a tweak to that process that makes it worse, and then we'll go back to the way we were doing it. Whatever it may be, the willingness to test, the willingness to try something a little bit different, even though it may be uncomfortable, even though it may be painful. Like, oh my God, we did that, it works, like it's fine. Well, okay, but we want to try it a little bit differently. John says in this section, he poses or has the quote that I love. I've never really thought about it like this. He says, when is the last time you did something for the last time? So when's the last time you can think of that you did something for the last time? It's interesting to think about. What could you stop doing that would allow you to start doing something else? The other example that comes to mind when you talk about testing and figuring out ways to do things differently is John in marketing came to me, I don't know, a week ago or so. And he's like, hey, I think you ought to listen to this podcast. I was listening to this episode, and I think you ought to check it out. I'm like, cool. I always love a good recommendation. So I listened to the episode earlier this week, and it was all about, I'm going to jack up the guy's name. His last name's Shapiro. Wrote a book, and it's all about reframing the question. And so he talks of an example of where the airline industry, they had their biggest complaint from customers was that it took too long to get their baggage. It just took too long. They get down there and they're waiting. They don't like it. And so the airports worked really, really hard with the airlines. They got all these things going, this, that, and the other. And they cut I think the wait time from, I think it was around 20 minutes, cut it in half. With all the things that they did, the efficiencies and processes and all of this stuff. So they were testing out these different ways of doing things, cut it in half to, I think they were between 8 and 10 minutes it took to get off the plane and get your bag. And so they're excited. They're like, you know what, this is awesome. We're doing some really good things here. And they put out a survey, and what do you think the number one complaint was? Took too long to get their baggage. They're like, you got to be kidding me. We literally cut the time in half. And it wasn't until they reframed the question, they continued to test. They didn't give up. They just continued to tweak and test and modify and figure out what little thing they could do. And they got to their answer by reframing the question. Not how can we get them their bags faster, but how can we make it take longer for them to get to their bags? And so they rerouted the passengers from the plane to the baggage carousel, and wouldn't you know what happened? That it took too long to get our bags went away. There was no longer the complaint. But that came through testing. That came through just trying to get a little better. And yes, I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking through every airport that I've ever walked through, like, oh, that was a long haul to where I was heading. Are we ever going to get there? The only airport that I know that did not do this, but they are pretty quick at getting their bags, is I believe it's Dallas, where you literally walk off your plane and literally right through the door, and the carousel's right there, which is a very odd concept to me. But regardless, we won't get into the airport talk. The big thing here when it comes to testing is if you aren't getting the result that you want, guess what? Try something different. Seems simple, but very tough to do, because trying something different means that you have to kind of admit that what you were doing wasn't as good as it could be. Doesn't mean it was wrong. Doesn't mean you were way off base. You may just be one step away. You may be one tweak of the process away from figuring it out. The next word, because obviously with testing, as we said, and many of you can probably admit to some of the things we've tested around here, is fail. One of the things, we were sitting in a meeting Wednesday, and one of the things I was most proud to hear was that people feel like it's okay to fail around here. I hope so, because I do it enough. I hope that's not an issue, because I'm going to try a lot more things and they're probably not going to work. So we're gonna keep on keeping on, because that's the fun stuff. Because every once in a while, when you try enough times, you come up with a really good solution. You look at, there's the famous example of, the Edison and the light bulb, and, his tried 10,000 times, and someone asked him if he thought it was a failure, and he just said, no, I've found 10,000 ways to not make a light bulb, but I'm still searching for the one that will help do that. And I think the important thing as leaders and really as a company is making sure that we indeed fail forward. And by failing forward means that, we're okay. It's all right to step out on that ledge. It's all right to try something different. It's all right to test. And the thing we have to understand about failure is, more than likely, when we test something new, it's not going to work the first time. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. I mean, there's a lot of things that we've done that the first go at it was so-so. But that's okay, because we learned from it, and then we made another change. Okay, let's try it this way now. Or here's what we had. I think we can make it a little bit better here. But no one wants to fail, right? And I mean, no one wants to come up short. No one wants to try something different. Because ultimately there's comfort in not failing and not putting yourself out there. It's a lot easier just to hope something different will happen. I'm here to tell you, nothing different is going to happen. And isn't it a lot more satisfying to know that you've got control over making something different happen? It is for me. A bit of a control freak, but it is for me. The next word that he talks about when it comes to the cycle of success. So you've got test, fail, and of course, failing forward leads us to learning. What can we learn from something? Why are people so opposed to learning something new? Well, maybe because it's a lot of what we talked about. Learning something new means that you may have to give up an old belief. You may have to give up something that you've taken as the right way to do something. You know, the one thing that most of you know about me is I do read quite often. I love books, and I think that as I think back on why I like to do that, I think comes back to I just love learning. I'm okay with, been doing that wrong for quite a few years now, but this seems like a better option. Let's try this. I mean, I feel like we're constantly, I was looking at, so the folder that I keep all of these notes in is about that thick now. I mean, we've been doing this for, I think it'll be 2 years maybe in November. So we're coming up on some time. So I've got a lot of notes in there, but the cool thing is like my notes for today don't look anything like my notes from when we first started. Similar concepts, but this to me is something new. Well, I got there from learning, from reaching out and trying to find a better way to do it. If you think about it, we could have just rested on the first or second lesson on what we said, and you said, we'll just go with that. Let's just see if we can make that work. But no, we didn't. We kept looking for more, seeking out more information, wanting to learn. And this is the key, I feel, is that we've got to understand that testing different things is great, but if we don't learn anything from it, then it wasn't really a useful test. So as you test different things, as you come up on failure, it's important to kind of take stock in your results. Understand what actually happened. Dig into what happened. Why did it happen? Because what I've found is that a lot of times the first thing that we commit to, that's why it failed, more times than not, getting a different perspective, looking at it from a different place, oftentimes reveals the answer and reveals the direction that you need to go. The next word that he talks about is after we learn, so we've tested, we failed, we've learned, is improve. So what do we take from what we've learned? How do we apply that? What I look at is the ability as leaders to really take ownership. This is, to me, the ownership piece. Anybody can test something, say they learned from it, but if we don't do anything to improve it, are we really leading? When I think about, and we've made oftentimes the kind of the separation between what it means to manage and what it means to lead. And when I think about that, I think this word is extremely extremely powerful. Improvement means growing. I equate leadership or leading with growing, as opposed to managing, which could be related to maintain. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we maintaining or are we leading? And that goes for if we're a department of one and we're just leading ourselves, or if we are leading 15, 20 people. Are we growing those people, or are we maintaining those people? Are we challenging them to get better? When it comes to leadership of yourselves, are you challenging yourself to get better? Or are you just simply maintaining? Oop, just got to get through this week. Oh, it's Monday. All right, Tuesday, Wednesday. Shoot, we're on the downslide now. Let's hang in there. Thursday, Friday. All right, we made it to another weekend. I can breathe. Or are you setting out at the beginning of the week to get a little bit better? Have you put down some goals to improve upon? Have you looked back on your performance last week and understood that, hey, that didn't go so well, or I think we could make that better. I'm going to try this coming up. You know, John points out a story. He did work with Chick-fil-A, and as some of you may know, the founder of Chick-fil-A is a guy named Truett Cathy, and he tells the story of he was working with Chick-fil-A, and it was when the Boston market came about, and they're sitting in a boardroom meeting, and all of these guys around the table are like, we got to get bigger, we got to increase our footprint, we got to get we got to really expand and do all of these things. And Truett Cathy looked at him and said, if we don't need to worry about getting bigger, we need to worry about getting better. If we get better, our customers will demand we get bigger. And I think that's a philosophy that we have here, where the growth happens because we continue to get better. And we continue to get better because we test, we fail, we learn, and then we improve. It's a very simple philosophy. Many people, I did a podcast Wednesday or something like that, and they asked, well, what do you attribute the growth to? And I said, well, I would attribute it to people just continuing to get better each and every day. That's plain and simple. It's a very simple solution. We don't have any, whiz-bang solution or strategy or pricing model or something like that. We don't have any of that. We just continue to get better. We just continue to tweak things. Well, that didn't work. Can we try this? Well, that didn't work. Can we try it this way? And to me, that's the fun part. Discovering a solution to a problem, as opposed to, this is how we're going to do it, and I don't care, come hell or high water, we're not changing, we're going straight ahead. Well, that's great, but what I found is the path to growth kind of zigzags. It's kind of choppy. Because you're going to try things and they may not work. That's fine. But the important part is you try, is you test. And the cool thing about the whole thing is we all have complete control. Because ultimately, a company is made up of individual people. And individual people, as I've said before, are all leaders. Because we're all in charge of improving ourselves. We're all in charge. We all have complete control over being better today than we were yesterday. A book I read and would recommend to anybody is a book by James Allen. It's called A Man Thinketh. I've read this. It's like a 35, 40-page book. I mean, like, it's tiny. Like, I got it in the mail. I was like, I don't think they gave me the whole thing. This seems pretty small. And literally, I was like, this cannot be it. Am I missing something? And in it, he says, and this is, I've read this book now probably 5 times, like in the past 3 weeks, because I feel like just the reminder of what it is trying to express is just extremely powerful. And it's one that I read at least a few pages every morning I wake up. I'm kind of on that kick right now because I just think there's just so much advice in there. And when it comes to improvement, I think this quote states it so wonderfully. James says, most people are anxious to improve their circumstance, but less anxious to improve ourselves. Would you say that's true or what? We hear it here. We're anxious to improve our circumstance. Why is that? Well, that's the easier route. If something would just happen, then maybe I could just sit idly and watch it improve. That'd be awesome. That would be awesome. Frankly, that would be great. However, isn't it empowering to know that we have complete control over what we do today to be better tomorrow? You have absolute control over you being better tomorrow than you were today. It doesn't matter about anything that's happening around you. What could you do today to be better? You know, as I thought about this quote, I thought about some of the things that we sometimes hear at the board meeting. They slip out when we're looking to improve our circumstances rather than ourselves. We sometimes hear it in service meetings. Sometimes hear it other places. Well, I could have done something if it was a better customer. Weren't buying anything. Knew it when I walked in. Knew it. I knew it. Could tell when it pulled up. If only we could get more calls on the board, you know. If only we could get them, I could do something with them. Oh, if only we could get better calls. Better call. What the better calls? Where are those at? Better weather. God, if we could just get some better weather, we'd be good. Unfortunately, we had a department in here that decided not to subscribe to that. We had a service department in the month of April in HVAC that said, I don't really care about better calls. I don't really care about better weather. I don't need any more calls. We're going to go out and do something with the calls we got. We're going to go out and improve ourselves. We're going to go get a little better. And they did things in a month that you would typically see as the biggest struggle and went out and hit their goal darn near every single day. But why is that? Why were they able to do that? We hadn't been able to do it in the past. We hadn't been able to figure out April. It's always a tough month. However, from my perspective, why that was so successful was because they placed the emphasis on improving themselves. How can I do something a little bit different on this next call than I did on the call before? How can we work together as a team to achieve this thing? And the important thing right now, as we sit where we are, is to not let our circumstances dictate how good we're going to be. Because it's very easy right now. Calls are flowing in, it's hot outside, everything's great. And it is nice. I'm not gonna lie. It is nice when that is happening. However, there is still opportunity for us to improve ourselves. There is still opportunity for everybody to be improving. And then what does that look like when your circumstance align and are favorable and you're still improving? We're still having the meetings. We're still digging in to find out how we could get better. I know you had an incredible day. Maybe the biggest day you ever had yesterday, but I think you can do more. I think you can ratchet it up just a little bit. What are you going to change today? What did you do yesterday that could have led to something bigger? To me, that's really where the secret lies. Is when things are going good, how do we continue to stay hungry to improve? How do we continue to test? How do we continue to maybe fail? But ultimately, work to get better, work to improve. You know, when we think about leadership, one thing that I've said before, and got it from, I've shared a lesson from Jocko Willink, who's a former Navy SEAL, and I've seen him speak live, which is pretty powerful. But you know, he says in the SEALs, the biggest thing that you can do is realize that as a leader, everything is your fault. And I've talked about this before. I feel like that's his way of saying it, and I think that's just more so his personality. But I think what he's really trying to say, or what I take from that, is the fact that fault is simply responsibility. As a leader, you take responsibility for what's happening. You take responsibility to improve. You take responsibility to improve your people. And if we all do believe that we are indeed leaders, then we all have to take responsibility for our own testing, failing, learning, improving. It's not easy. No one wants to go test today. It's Friday. It's nice out. No one wants to go try something new. No one wants to get out of their comfort zone. Trust me, I don't either. It's nice. Kick my feet up on my desk, hang out, be fun. But what can we do today to get better? I don't know if I've ever kicked my feet up on my desk. That seems uncomfortable. But regardless, what are we going to do today? How are we going to get uncomfortable? That's the key to continually improving as a leader. You know, change often has, I've seen it on a number of reviews and stuff like that. We're always changing stuff. Change never stops. And unfortunately, change gets a bad name. But isn't change improving? So I always look at it when we're always changing things. Cool. Well, that's good. That's a positive. You know, we're always improving things. That's good. But it gets a bad name because it's uncomfortable. It gets a bad name because no one wants to do that. And we found a pretty good way. Let's just roll with that. That is the task. That is the task to how we continue to grow this place, how you continue to grow yourself. Are you willing to change? Leadership is not a title. It's not something you'll eventually get to. You're responsible for it today. You're responsible to be a leader today. Leaders are not born. Leaders do not get a lucky break. They don't fall into something. Because ultimately those people are probably not great leaders. We are all born to lead. Because essentially, leading is helping others. Leading is taking action, not waiting for something to happen. If you're waiting, you're definitely not a leader. If you're taking action, if you're willing to be curious, if you're willing to test new ways of doing things, if you're willing to fail, learn from it, and then improve, you'll never not be a leader. And the more and more you do that, the more and more you test, the more and more you fail, the more you learn, and the more you improve, the more people will follow you. Because ultimately, through that entire process, you're showing others that you have the courage to go get better, to go chase something that you want to be tomorrow. You show them that they too may have the courage to go after it, to go do something that they've thought about but not yet realized. So as we wrap up today, the question is, what are you willing to change today? What are you willing to do a little bit different? It's not going to be easy. It's definitely going to pull you right back into that spot where yesterday was fine. I'm good. But what if we do change? What if we do try something new today? What if we push ourselves just a little bit harder? What's that begin to look like tomorrow? We don't know. But I have a funny feeling it'll be something good, even if you fail, because you learned something. Maybe you learned your way was pretty darn good. Okay, cool. But then are you willing to change it again to find out if maybe that change just wasn't the right change? We all have the power. We do. And again, I look back on that quote. Many people are anxious to improve their circumstance, but less anxious to improve ourselves. Don't go improve your circumstance. Go improve yourself. And your circumstances will improve. Don't wait. Don't wait by hoping something's going to happen. Go make it happen. You have the power to do it. It may not happen the next day. It may not happen a week from now. It may not happen a year from now. But I promise you, if you keep changing and you keep tweaking and you keep testing, you'll get there. But you got to be willing to do it. You got to be willing to stare failure in the face and say, all right, let's go at it again.